What would Martin Luther King say if he was sitting there in the back of a cold room watching a black woman with a determined gaze and natural hair be dismissed with the same phrase that has cut through decades like a velvet whip? You're not the right type. You who are here, listening. Breathe this in with me. Because Martin Luther King wouldn't need to hear anything else. He wouldn't need a technical explanation, a casting report, an industry opinion. He would just need to look into her eyes, and he would already know. He would have heard it before, in other voices, in other centuries, with other faces. This wasn't just any rejection. It was the same no that rejected black voices at the polls, that denied education in schools, that silenced talents on stages. The same no in different clothes, but with the same intention, to erase. Whoopi Goldberg wasn't rejected for lack of talent. It was never about that. It was because of what she never hid. Her skin, her nose, her mouth, her hair, her history, her pride, her truth. Martin Luther King wouldn't use a single word in anger. But you would feel the rage in his silence. Not that explosive rage, but the rage that overflows from the eyes. Because seeing a black woman being rejected for being exactly who she is seeing the dream slip through your fingers again. It's not an isolated scene. It's a cycle. It's an echo. Have you ever stopped to think about how many times the same scene repeats itself without anyone seeing? Without anyone speaking? Without anyone being bothered? How many black women hear that they are not the right type from a young age, in movies, in jobs, in schools, in meetings, in relationships? How many Whoopies were left behind because they didn't have the stomach to smile in the face of rejection? And how many times does the industry, even today, still have the audacity to call this a profile? Martin Luther King fought against a racism that screamed, that beat, that burned crosses. But this one, the one Whoopi faced, is different. This one hides in meetings. This one serves coffee with a smile. This one praises the resume and denies the body. This one says that she's great, but she doesn't fit the target audience. This one feeds on silence. And that's precisely why it's even more cruel. Do you understand what this means? It means that even being one of the few artists in the world to achieve the EGOT, Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony, she still had to justify her presence, still had to walk further, prove herself more, justify herself more. And what's most painful about all of this is that she never asked for permission, never begged for space. She simply showed up. And that for many was unforgivable. Martin Luther King knew that the greatest revolution isn't made with screams. It's made with permanence, with stubbornness, with presence. And that's what Whoopi represents, the woman who dared to remain. She didn't change her hair to please, she didn't lighten her skin, she didn't soften her tone, she didn't mold her voice. She didn't pretend not to see. She continued, day after day, year after year, refusing to be invisible. And I ask you, looking into your eyes, how can anyone still say that racism is a thing of the past? Do you know how many times art has tried to disguise this violence with beautiful words? How many times have they said that it wasn't personal, that she was incredible but not marketable? How many times did the door close with a smile, but behind it there was fear, fear of what her presence meant? Because when a black woman steps onto a stage without asking for permission, the whole world is forced to look, to confront what it ignored, to see what it always tried to hide. Martin Luther King said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. But what he meant is deeper than it seems. He meant that when a black woman is rejected for being who she is, all our victories are threatened. Everything that was built, fought for, suffered, bled for, turns to dust when the voice of one is silenced by the fear of her strength. That's what you need to feel. It's not just about Whoopi. It's about every black woman who walks into a room and already knows, even before speaking, that she's there to be tested, measured, compared, judged. It's about the weight of carrying not only her own name, but a whole expectation on her back, and still smile and keep going. Martin Luther King would never romanticize this struggle. He would never paint it as overcoming. He knew how much it hurts to be called exaggerated, paranoid, aggressive, when all you want is to exist with dignity. Do you feel that? What you're seeing here is a portrait, a piece of the system, a reflection of a structure that prefers characters to people, that accepts black bodies as long as they are molded, calibrated, cleansed of ancestry. But Whoopi was never a character. She was and is a presence, And that's why she's unsettling. Martin Luther King wouldn't see in her just an actress. He would see a mirror. He would see a symbol. He would see someone who, without needing to stand on platforms, made politics with her own existence. And maybe he would say something that never came out of the speeches, but that here takes on another color. You don't have to fit into anything. You don't have to ask for permission. You don't have to explain yourself. You already are, and that's enough. Enough to hate you, enough to deny you, but also enough for you to keep going. Because you are not alone. You know what really hurts? It's realizing that even today, with everything Whoopi has achieved, with everything that has already been shouted in the streets, with everything that has already fallen in history, there is still a right type being used as an excuse to hide racism. But there are no more excuses. There is no more acceptable excuse. There is no more room for this farce. Martin Luther King believed that time is not neutral, that either you act or you allow, that either you confront or you consent. So now I ask you, with all the strength of history on my shoulders, are you still going to accept this in silence? Or will you remember that every time a black woman is rejected for being exactly who she is, all of humanity regresses? Think about it. Feel it. And don't forget, because racism doesn't go away when you pretend it's not there. It just changes clothes, and if you don't recognize it, it keeps winning. You need to understand that when a woman like Whoopi Goldberg enters a space that was designed to erase her, she's not just acting, but she's reclaiming something ancestral, something that didn't start with her and unfortunately doesn't end with her. It's as if every step she takes on this Hollywood floor echoes the sound of all the voices that were silenced before her. It's not a scene, it's survival. And Martin Luther King would see that clearly. He would see that the problem isn't just with Whoopi, it's with everything she represents. Because her body carries a history that this society has learned to fear. Whoever rejects her isn't just rejecting a style, a profile, an aesthetic. They are rejecting the idea that a black body can be a protagonist without apologizing. They are rejecting the courage of a woman who says, "I am here and I will not change to fit your mold. And here you need to stop. Stop to realize how this connects with your own reality. Because this rejection doesn't only happen there, at the highest level of cameras. It happens in the job market, in the classroom, in the company meeting, in the hospital, in the job interview, in the elevator where they look away. How many times have you seen this? How many times have you felt it? Martin Luther King spoke of the urgency of now, and now still bleeds. He said that prolonged waiting is often the denial of justice. And what is more time-consuming than waiting for skin color to cease being a criterion for exclusion? The truth is that we still live in a world where black people need to be 2, 3, 4 times more to have half the space. And when they succeed, they still need to deal with the distrust, with the sideways glances, with the smiles that are not sincere. You feel that, don't you? Because it's not just Whoopi. It's you too. It's your mother, your sister, your friend. It's all of us. Martin Luther King wouldn't talk about quotas, meritocracy, or inclusion as marketing products. He would talk about soul, about conscience, about historical responsibility. He would ask, how long are you going to pretend that equality has arrived just because you let a black person enter through a door? How long are you going to use a success story to hide millions of forced failures? Whoopi's presence is not an exception. It's resistance, and that needs to be said, needs to be shouted. Because every time a black woman is called too intense, too strong, doesn't fit the profile, the system is saying, you threaten me. And Martin Luther King knew that every threat to the racist system is also a possibility for real change. Do you have any idea what it's like to live with that weight? To carry on your back the task of representing, of proving, of being an example, as if making mistakes wasn't allowed, as if faltering was opening the door to 100 more rejections. Whoopi Goldberg, even with all the awards, with all the recognitions, still needs to fight for respect. And that's not victory, that's denouncement. Martin Luther King always spoke about the cost of freedom, and he knew that this cost is higher for those who carry skin marked by history. The freedom to be who you are without needing to ask for permission is a right denied every day to millions of black people. No matter how much they advance, there is always an invisible wall that tries to contain them. And when they break that wall, they don't receive applause. They receive more tests, more demands, more requirements. Do you understand the gravity of this? Do you feel how all of this touches on places that no one wants to name? The pain of not being enough in the eyes of a standard that was built to exclude you. The pain of having to transform each space into a trench, each conquest into a political act, each smile into a defense. It's not about victimhood, it's about reality. A reality that Martin Luther King never stopped facing, even when they accused him of being radical, of being too much of a dreamer, of being unnecessary. But what about today? Who is willing to pay the same price? Are you? Because watching this story and not feeling anything is also becoming an accomplice, is getting used to it. And it was against this that Martin Luther King fought. Against habit, against indifference, against the normalization of inequality. He said that what worried him most wasn't the cry of the wicked, but the silence of the good. So if you are silent, you need to think about what you are allowing. Seeing Whoopi Goldberg being rejected for not being the right type is seeing the reflection of a society that still measures the value of people with a white ruler, that still believes that black people need to soften their presence to be accepted, that still chooses who can love, who can shine, who can represent. Martin Luther King believed in a world where character was more important than color, but that world hasn't arrived yet, because the character of the black woman is still questioned before she even opens her mouth, because the talent of the black woman is still read with distrust, because the body of the black woman is still sexualized, exploited, or simply discarded. And if that doesn't revolt you, maybe you need to review what you've learned about justice. Maybe you need to listen more carefully to the silences that surround each rejection, because racism doesn't always show itself with explicit hatred. Sometimes it comes dressed as a criterion, as a filter, as doesn't match the audience, as doesn't fit the role, as not universal. As if what is black could never be universal. Martin Luther King would never accept that lie, because he knew that human universality is not white, it's human, it's made of everyone, and that denying the universality of black people is denying their own humanity. You need to look at this with different eyes, you need to feel the discomfort, because history won't change if those who are alive now continue to accept the old rules. And Whoopi Goldberg broke that rule, not with speeches, but with permanence. She stayed, she faced it, she continued, and continues. Martin Luther King said that silence in the face of injustice is betrayal, and that betrayal is subtle. It comes when you say you are against racism, but continue to repeat jokes, reinforce stereotypes, hire only those who look like you, consume the same type of beauty, always applaud the same faces. It comes when you see talent, but don't offer space. When you recognize the pain but are not willing to change the system that causes it, and you know that. You know that racism against black people doesn't only live in insults. It feeds on repetition, on structure, on habit. It's in what you call normal. It's in what you've learned to accept without thinking. And those who suffer from it don't have the luxury of choosing when they will feel it. You can't turn it off, you can't escape. It's in the gaze that looks away, in the opportunity that never comes, in the biased question, in the compliment that carries poison. Whoopi heard for years that she wasn't the right type. They didn't say it just once. It was repeated in glances, in silence, in invitations that never came. And even so, she continued. But you need to know what that costs. Because continuing without being seen, without being respected, without being recognized, requires more than courage. It requires faith. Faith that one day skin will not be a reason for a closed door. Faith that talent will not be measured by the shape of the nose. Faith that the eyes that reject you today, tomorrow may learn to see you. Martin Luther King wouldn't talk about victories here. He would talk about wounds, wounds that still bleed, that you may never have felt in your own skin, but that are there right in front of you, asking to be seen. Because that's what racism does to black people. It hurts, but disguises the cut, pretends it didn't hurt, says it's an exaggeration, that it was a coincidence, that it wasn't meant to be bad. But it was, and it continues to be. And now I ask you, what are you going to say? That you are not to blame, that you have nothing to do with it? That it's just a story of a rich actress who managed to win in the end? Do you really think that winning annuls the pain? That success erases the humiliation? That the awards cover the years in which she had to swallow her own voice? Martin Luther King wouldn't stand applauding. He would sit next to her, in silence, just so she knew she wasn't alone. And maybe he would turn to you there where you are and ask, "What are you doing with your place in the world?" Because if you have privilege and don't use it to open the way, then you are helping to keep the door closed. And that needs to end. You need to start noticing who is on the outside, who has never been called, who is only remembered when it is convenient, who still needs to mold themselves so as not to be discarded, who needs to accept little so as not to lose everything. If you truly believe that everyone deserves equality, then your stance needs to change. Your perspective needs to shift. Your criteria needs to evolve. Your silence needs to end. Because every time you pretend not to see, someone like Whoopi is forced to carry yet another burden that isn't theirs. Someone has to pretend they don't care to avoid being called bitter. They have to smile even when everything inside is screaming. They have to carry on as if it doesn't hurt just to prove they deserve to be there. Martin Luther King said that change doesn't come with time. It comes with people. And you are one of those people, so look inward. See what still lives within you, what still perpetuates this system. Because there is no neutrality when it comes to human dignity. You either fight racism or you uphold it. And if you've made it this far, it's because something within you no longer wants to uphold it. So don't bury this feeling. Don't turn it into a pretty quote. Don't just share it because it sounds right. Turn it into action, into attitude, into choice. Every day, in every space, wherever you are. Because racism doesn't disappear with speeches. It only retreats when awareness turns into practice, when fear turns into courage, when empathy turns into responsibility. If what you felt here touched any part of your heart, then do something with it. Because this story doesn't end with it, or with you. It continues. And how you respond now can decide how it will be told later. If this resonated with you, comment here. I felt it. Because if you felt it, then you are no longer in the same place you were before. And that is already the beginning.